Hello Automators, I have a Nest Protect CO and smoke detector here. This is the wired version that I'm going to go ahead and get set up in my home today. Show you a full unboxing and a full setup video here for getting this ready in your home. So let's get going. In terms of actually looking at the package here, Nest always does a very good job with their packaging. I never have any complaints with how it looks. So in terms of getting it open, there's just a very simple tab right here to pull like there is with most Nest products, and then you're simply pulling apart the box here. Now as it opens, you just see the box pulls right open, and again we're confronted with even more packaging. There's a little tab down here that you simply pull open, and there's the device itself. So we can go ahead and pull that out. So give me a second and I'll pull everything out of the box. In terms of what you get in the box, you start out, there's a number of different manuals and actually a sticker here that you also get. So a couple of different manuals, but that's why you're watching this. In terms of the device itself, there is a physical button right here. And then on the back of it, there's a ton of information here that you can just take a quick read through, but it's telling you what color the different lights are and when it will alarm based on how many parts per million of CO you have in your home. There's also a USB connection up here at the top. Now down here, they actually have a battery that is contained on the device, so you actually pull that as part of the process here. Overall, a very hefty device, and I'm very interested to get this set up. Now the other piece is the actual plate here, and this has to basically face you. So the rubber is going to be on your ceiling or your roof, and then this is what will be facing down as you mount your Nest here on the bottom. So they give you that. They also give you three, you call them surrettes, I think, basically, but this is where you're going to tie your cables in from your existing installation, and we'll show that in a bit. They give you 4 drywall screws, or they're drywall ready, so they are really intended to pierce your drywall and stay in indefinitely. So you can feel really sharp teeth actually right here. So they're probably going to stay in just fine. And then finally, they give you a cable that is intended to be your connector into the device. So I'll just show you here. This is intended to click in right there. So this is going to make connections to your other cables that you already have in your ceiling there. And obviously what you're going to be doing is putting the 2 in there and then making a connection. So that's really it. So in terms of unboxing the device, that's really it. Let's go ahead and get this set up. Now, what I'll tell you Nest tells you to do is download the application, and then once you've set it up fully in the application, once you have this thing powered and basically connected to your Wi-Fi in your home, then go install it. And that makes sense. You don't want to go and remove your existing installation until you're sure this device is going to work for you. So let's get started with that process. So if you don't already have the Nest application on your iOS or Android device, you're going to need to go and get that. Also, if you don't have an account already, you'll have to sign up to an account, and your initial start of the process will look a little bit different, but you'll end up in the same screen here after I tap basically add product. Now, if you have any Nest products right here, they will show up. I used to have a Nest Cam that I removed from the application here. You can see I can add a product there, or up in the top right, I can tap on that gear icon, and then I can scroll down to add product. Now, what they want me to do is go and scan the QR code. There is a QR code on the back of the Nest Protect, so I'm just going to scan that. And this will start my setup process for that device specifically. So what I'm going to need is my Wi-Fi password, a ladder, and a screwdriver. Now, if you have Nest Protect or Nest devices in your home already connected to your network, when you hit next, it's actually going to essentially try and connect to those devices and then pass the Wi-Fi credentials into your Nest Protect. So where am I putting my Nest product? This one's in the basement. Now what they'd like me to do is pull out the tab here basically on the battery. So as soon as I do this, essentially the device is now awake.
Hi from Nest. Bonjour de Nest. Press the button now for English. Ready. Press to test. This is only a test. The alarm will sound. The alarm is loud. The test starts in 10 seconds. Press to cancel. 10, 9, 8,
I'll let
7,
this blow me away.
6, 5, 4,
And you.
3, 2, 1. This is only a test. Testing smoke. Testing carbon monoxide. The test is finished. Everything looks good.
Well, that's good news. Now I hit next in the middle of that just because I wanted to go forward, and it says it's trying to connect to the Nest Protect that's sitting here basically right now. So now it's saying it's looking for Wi-Fi networks. And again, I've already plugged in a Wi-Fi network before. If you haven't, this is what you're going to have show up. So I have to choose that Wi-Fi network, and now I have to go ahead and put in my Wi-Fi password. So bear with me here a second. Now, once you've actually put in that Wi-Fi password, you go ahead and you hit your next button, and now it's setting up the Wi-Fi connection of this device. So you have to keep that in mind. That's what this is using, a Wi-Fi connection. It's also using that in terms of interconnected devices. So in your wall, if you're using the wired version like me, it's likely that you have an interconnection wire basically in your roof or in your ceiling already. Now that interconnected wire is no longer going to be used because the Nest system is using Wi-Fi. So when you upgrade one device in your home, like I'm about to do, you're actually eliminating that connection between an older smoke or fire alarm sensor and this newer Nest sensor. So keep that in mind. They're no longer going to be connected unless you're buying in pairs, which you can do through Nest and through most retailers. You can buy a couple of these. So I just heard a connected notification from this device, and it still says it's adding to my Nest account. Now you guys can't see that right now, but it's basically finishing up the process here. So now that it's added this to my Nest account, I can go ahead and hit next. If you had a second one, you could actually put that second one right there right away. Now we're talking about the path light. So one of the great features about Nest here, the Nest Protect, is that it does have a path light basically around here, and it will light up automatically as you walk by it if you'd like. So if the room is dark, basically it says it'll turn on for a moment when someone walks by. Do I want that? Yeah, I'm gonna leave that on. So this is a Nest Protect, and it has some additional features and capabilities. So it does a sound check basically for its own voice and its own ability to produce sound. It's going to do a check. Now, when would you like that? You can actually set a preferred time. So when you want to have that happen, they're actually giving you very little choices here. So I'm going to turn this off initially, and I think over time I will turn that back on and play with that setting a little bit. But now, essentially, we're ready to install this in my ceiling. And what I'm going to do is give you pictures of my current setup, show you how I'm doing that, walk you through the full basically connection process over an existing spot in my home. So you're obviously going to need 120 volts. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is turn off your power as you go to do this. So that's why I'm going to give you pictures, because basically I'm going to turn off everything in my home and then go ahead and set this up for you and show you the final product. So let's get going. In general, my setup is going to be relatively similar to yours if you're in a North American market. So you can see this is a very standard smoke detector, and it doesn't even have a CO detector with it. Now, I had to pull a pin on my detector, and once I pulled that pin, then I was able to actually twist it off. Now, what's funny about that is it's usually righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but in this case, it was righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. So anyways, that comes off, and then you can see the exposure of the 3 cables. Now, the red cable in my home was what's called the interconnect cable, and this is the one that essentially gets eliminated from your Nest Protect. You don't need it for the Nest Protect, and it can't actually take that cable. It's only going to take the black and white. Now, the black is essentially the hot in my house. You need to make sure you understand in your home it could be a different cable, so you have to understand what you're taking out here, and that's one of the hardest things to do, obviously, but I can't direct you in your own home. For me, the black was hot. Now, once I had that pulled out, so I basically just had to pull the 2 tabs on the side of mine. Once I had that pulled out, now my device is removed, and the next thing I had to tackle was, okay, what am I doing with these cables? So for me, I actually grabbed a pair of clippers, and before I did this, I tested inside the pins of my previous connector piece here. I actually tested inside the pins using a multimeter to make sure that the power was indeed off. This is really where you have to be sure, because in the next step, what I did is I cut my cables. I wasn't able to just pull them out of this connector. They must have been crimped in there previously. So I just cut them. And once I had them cut, now I had to strip them. So again, I did a second test. Now this is just a pen tester that I'm holding up to it. And I had previously tested it on a working circuit. So that's always something very important for you to go ahead and check, is just make sure that that circuit is dead and that your tester is actually working before you trust it. Now that interconnect, like I told you, that's my red cable, and in general it will be in North America a red cable in between your different thermostats. Now I basically taped that and pushed it into one of the serrettes here. After that, I took the cable that Nest gave me and I tied it together with the cable coming out of my wall after I had stripped it out. So you can just see I'm just twisting the 2 together, and again I'm going to treat that. I'm just going to tape it and then push it into a serrette. I'm doing the same with the white, and again I'm testing each cable prior to doing this. So there's the electrical tape on my installation. So now I can go ahead and push them into the serrettes. So once all 3 cables are in the serrettes, I have to remove the existing plate that was there for my previous detector. So that's just a couple of screws in the case of mine. And once I've done that, the next step is to actually make sure that all the cabling or excess cabling is pushed up back into my ceiling. You can see I was also pushing my additional connections that I've made into the ceiling as well, and just really leaving the white and the black cord coming out onto the main connector. Now once I did that, I went ahead and I put the new Nest Protect plate on into my ceiling. Now what you'll notice on my picture is I used 3 of the new screws from Nest, and actually 1 that was from my existing installation. It just allowed me to ensure that this was a really solid connection. So I went ahead, I did that. You don't need to. You can use all 4 of those into your ceiling drywall, and that's all you need to do. I just happen to be able to get a little extra out of my installation, a little extra stability. Now once you have the ceiling mount all fixed, what you're going to do is actually connect the back of your Nest Protect into those cables, into the cable connection, and then you're pushing your Nest up and you're just trying to align the tabs or the insets that are here on the plate. You're just going to get those aligned, and then you just twist your Nest Protect onto the mount, and you're all done at this point. So the last thing you have to do actually is go ahead and push the button to run a test.
Press to test. This is only a test. The alarm will sound.
All right, well, let's go through what we can manage now that the device is fully set up in our home. And you know, at the end of the setup process, once I pressed that button again on the Nest Protect, it went through a whole nother sequence of making sure everything was working. Took a couple of minutes, so don't get nervous as you're sitting there waiting, thinking, okay, now I've put something in my ceiling and it's not going to actually work. But it did actually work, and it just takes a couple of minutes to go through its final testing procedure in some cases. Now, inside of our Nest application, you can see the home page. You can see my Basement Protect. It is actually named that, and I can go and tap on it, and you can see the last time things were actually checked on the device, which I really love. You can see the history if you'd like to go into the history, and you know, over time, obviously that's going to fill a lot more than I have right now, but we can see the checkup, and we can also trigger another checkup if we'd like to go ahead and do that. So you can see you can just jump between the history over here and the checkup right here. So now up in the top right, there's our settings button. That's really what matters here. Now inside of the settings, you can see the Protect sound check. So when do you want to do a sound check? And we talked about this earlier, but here's where you can re-manage that setting if you'd like to do a monthly sound check. So you can turn that on midday between 11 and 4 a.m. Go ahead and it will give you a notification before it begins if you'd like it to. So obviously, I think that's generally a good idea to check monthly, and it's just doing it automatically. You don't have to think about it anymore as an owner of a smoke and CO alarm. Now, silencing alarm. So do you want to be able to silence the alarm from the Nest application? Now that's an interesting thing to me. You know, I think I'd rather have direct interaction for myself, but that's up to you. So you can go ahead and you can turn that on or off. So really, from a settings perspective, you want to head down here at the bottom to the name of your device. So it was the section Protects, and then mine is called Basement. Now the path light setting, you can turn it off all the time, on, which means when someone walks by, they're going to be able to essentially, they're going to have a path light show up as they walk by and it's dark in the room, or you can have it always on. And what I'll tell you is that it will take almost a day to kind of reset the setting. So it's going through its next check, essentially the next day, its full check, and then it will redo the settings. So you may have to wait a day unless you actually get up on another ladder and go and actually press that button up at the top of that. I really like this next feature. It's called Nightly Promise, and Nightly Promise, essentially, the device will turn green for a second when you turn out all the lights. So it's essentially telling you, I'm good to go. You don't need to worry about anything here in your home. If you've ever worked with these types of instrumentation type devices, you know that particles, including steam, can actually get in the way of these devices. So it will actually do its own kind of self-check whether or not something is steam if you turn that on. So if you're in a relatively high humidity area in your bathroom, in a kitchen, you'll want to turn on that steam check for sure. Now there's something called Heads Up, and this is basically, you know, your CO is rising and we want to tell you about it before we actually trigger an alarm and essentially ask you to get out. So, you know, you can go and then you have a little bit of diagnostic time, I think, at that point. It's not as loud, it's more of a, you know, an alarm to get you moving, to get you thinking about the situation that's coming. There's also a brightness control here. It's essentially just how bright do you want it to be with the pathway and with the Nightly Promise. Down below the brightness, there's basically just a Wi-Fi connection discussion here right now, just because I only have one device. If you had multiple here, I think you would be seeing multiple in this. I haven't actually confirmed that, but then there's the where. So where is this device physically? You can go ahead and you can change that, and you can adjust the label. So, you know, if you had multiple of these in the basement, maybe you wouldn't want to call it basement, but you could call it basement next to the TV or basement next to the furnace room, whatever you'd like there. So lots of opportunities there. And then there is a technical info here, and this is obviously going to give you things like your MAC address and then just some technical details about the software and the physical device itself. So down at the very bottom, remove Nest Protect. So if you're ever removing this from your home, this is where you're coming to. So now I'm back on the home screen, and before I go into this up top here, you can change the home and away setting here, but as far as a Nest Protect is concerned, it really doesn't matter. So I just wanted to show you could do that. If you have cameras, it obviously becomes important, but up here in the top right, I'm just going to hit the gear, and down at the bottom you can see we can go into the basement again, or the Nest Protect, the set of devices in that room, and you can go through all of those same settings in this way. So you don't have to remember the way I went, you just have to go to some of the settings here. So the first thing is account. So up at the top here, you can manage your account if you'd like. You can manage the emails you're getting from Nest, and what I'll tell you is that with the Nest Protect, it's a little different than the cameras. With the cameras, you do get a different set of reports, or a monthly report essentially. You can sign up for news and marketing there. Of course, managing your account is things like your password and your username, things like that. Now, in terms of home information, this is where they want you to come and put in a bunch of information about where you live and the type of house that you're in. So you can see the type of building, the number of thermostats, construction size, etc., etc. In terms of home away assist, it really doesn't matter here with your Nest Protect. It's going to notify you no matter what. And yeah, actually that's what they say right there. So you could go into the sound check options though again here and make a decision on that again, but we've already seen that. So moving back to the home settings screen here, spaces is essentially, we've already seen this. These are your different rooms essentially, and there's where you can add a label to your device if you'd like. So moving into notifications here, notifications, really simple for a Nest Protect. Basically, you're getting notifications. The only setting you have access to is again the sound check notifications. So really nothing new there again. In terms of the family section, so you can go ahead and you can add people to be able to come in and manage directly. So, I've already invited my wife. She still hasn't signed up. This was a couple of weeks ago I invited her, so maybe I want to go ahead and do that again, or do it for her, and then she can get those same notifications on her phone. That's really all we're talking about with a Nest Protect. In terms of contacts, these are emergency contacts that can be triggered on an immediate basis from your phone. So it's not going to instantly call the police for you or the fire department, but you're able to add those contacts in, and part of your notification on a fire alarm or a CO alarm would be the opportunity to make that phone call right away from your phone. So you can go ahead and you can actually add in the phone number for your local fire department, for example. In terms of the Works with Nest section here on the application, now I've already connected Google Assistant in the past. I could go ahead, I can remove connections, but there's other things out there on the market that work with Nest directly. Now, of course, down at the bottom, you can go ahead, you can add another product if you had, but ultimately we're done here with the Nest Protect smoke and CO alarm detector. Ultimately, I would say this is the first Nest device that really feels like it's almost perfect. There's really nothing that I could point to that would suggest that, this device isn't going to be great for years and years, and that's the feedback I've gotten. But I am, of course, going to provide you a full review of this product. And like I said, I'm going to show you some of those integration videos coming up here on the channel. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.